This is the Uptick Network Stock Day Podcast, sponsored by InvestorsHangout.com. Penny stock news and interviews from the microcap world. Public information on OTC, pink sheets, and microcap stocks from around the world. With your host, Everett Jolly.
On today's show, I have an incredible guest. He's been doing some incredible things with this company. It's DelMar Pharmaceuticals. His name is Jeffrey Bacha. He is the CEO of DelMar Pharmaceuticals. Well, they got uplisted on the NASDAQ, trading under the ticker symbol DMPI. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be back.
You know, give us a little bit, if you would, before we get into Q&A, give my listeners a little bit of background of yourself and your company.
Sure. Happy to do that. So we founded DelMar Pharmaceuticals in 2010 around a drug that had been studied originally at the National Cancer Institutes here in the United States. So the NCI had done a lot of work on the drug in studying it in different types of cancer. So it was a great place for us to start because we could pick up this drug, begin working on it in a situation where a lot of work had already been done. So we had an understanding of the safety profile of the molecule, as well as evidence of activity against different types of cancer from prior published clinical trials that the National Cancer Institute sponsored. So it was a great place for us to begin. And our business model is to take all of that information and then use the best modern biology tools to really understand how the drug works. And marrying the understanding of how the drug works with indications in cancers where we already know the drug works lets us really identify the key patient populations that we believe we can help. And sort of taking an older drug and turning it almost into a personalized medicine approach by understanding mechanism and then pointing that in ways that we can believe we can solve unmet medical needs in major cancers.
That's amazing. You know, and are we talking about the VAL 083?
That is correct. That's VAL083 is our lead compound.
Because you were in my office 2 or 3 years ago, and you and I met, and we went out to lunch, and you were telling me all these great things that you were going to do. You know, since then, I've had over 1,000 CEOs come on my show, and it's amazing that half of these guys say they're going to do something, they never do it, but you're not like that. You're 100% stand-up guy, follow through, you made it happen. So congratulations on that part. I really do mean that. Also, congratulations on your recent announcement about financing. Can you share how you're going to use these funds and what they're going to be used for?
Well, absolutely. Thank you very much. Raising money anytime is always a challenge, and we're blessed by some very supportive shareholders and new institutional investors who have believed in what we're doing and are excited to be a part of it. So the funds we raised today are primarily going to be used to continue the development of VAL083, and primarily as we move the drug into a pivotal phase 3 clinical trial for glioblastoma, which is the most common and aggressive form of brain cancer. Many people may recall that this is unfortunately the cancer that Vice President Biden's son died from. And it's a terrible, terrible cancer where, unfortunately, with all of the progress we've made in medicine in the last 30 years, nothing's really changed. So the median survival from diagnosis with this cancer, 30, 35 years ago was about 15 months. And today, unfortunately, it's the same. So when we met originally, we were just beginning our clinical trials with VAL083 and have since progressed through a phase 2 clinical trial where we reconfirmed that the drug is active against GBM, just like it was in the original NCI's hands. And we're treating patients initially that are very, very sick and have failed all other therapies. But importantly, we've also identified a biomarker where we can identify the patients that are going to benefit from our drug, identify the patients that are going to be resistant to current therapies. And so rather than just treating patients who have failed everything else, we're now beginning to treat patients who are newly diagnosed, and that's where we believe we can have the most impact on the disease.
Can you, and I don't want you to, take all day to explain this, but can you give us a 101 class of phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, and why it's so important that you guys are at phase 3 and the stepping stones for my listeners?
Right. So phase 1 clinical trials traditionally are safety. In a lot of types of treatments, It's actually healthy volunteers who take the therapy to make sure it's safe. In the case of cancer, it's always patients. So phase 1 and phase 2 sort of meld together. Phase 2 is where you're looking at initial evidence of efficacy or activity against the cancer. So in our case, what we saw in the phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trial was what's called a dose response. So as patients were receiving higher doses of the drug, they were living longer, which is very, very exciting.
Absolutely.
And so now we've completed that phase 2 clinical trial. We had a formal meeting with the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration in Washington, D.C., to talk about what we'd learned so far and work with them to develop a plan for the next and final trial, which will be the trial that we'll seek approval from. So this trial will be 180 patients. It will take about a little under 2 years to complete. And so it's really, we're now at the cusp of really being able to move forward into that pivotal trial with the financing that we raised today. In addition, we have opened another phase 2 clinical trial, also in the same brain cancer, but in earlier patients at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Texas. So we're actively enrolling that trial as well. So we're very, very excited about where we are and the opportunities to move forward toward this, eventually toward an approval here.
Jeffrey, what can you tell us about your lead program, how it differentiates for other drug and other cancer therapies? What makes the VAL-083 so special?
So one of the things that is a differentiator out of the gate is starting with a drug that you already are confident that it works in the area that you're focused in, because of the prior clinical trials and work that was done at the National Cancer Institute. So that's a big risk management step for us to know that we've got activity of the drug. And so what we've done, as I said, is really understand the mechanism. And as biology evolves and new tools are developed, you can really dig down into a cancer cell and find out what this drug is doing and how it's acting against that cancer cell. So in glioblastoma, the major drug that's used to treat the disease is something called temozolomide. It is a DNA targeting agent, actually an alkylating agent, that attacks the tumor's DNA at a certain point. And the challenge is that same point is one of the most prominent sites of mutation from natural causes, cigarette smoking, sunlight, what have you, that is out there. And so the body has developed a very powerful natural defense against anything that attacks that point on DNA. And unfortunately, most of us have a high expression of an enzyme, which is that defense mechanism called MGMT. And if you're a high expressor of MGMT, and roughly 2/3 of glioblastoma patients are, that drug's not going to work. And we now understand that. And what we've learned about VAL-083 is it is also a DNA targeting agent, but it hits the tumor's DNA at a slightly different place. And so the damage we're doing to the tumor is invisible to that repair mechanism. So we can treat the 2 out of 3 patients that are not going to respond to the current standard of care, and that's the game changer here.
Let's say that you guys get approval 2 years from now. How big is this market space?
So the market for temozolomide in 2013 was $1 billion in sales a year. The size of the market globally is expected to continue to grow as new therapies are moving forward. It's a fairly rare tumor. It's about 15,000 patients a year in the United States, but still, because of the difference that we can make in survival, we believe it's a $1 billion market opportunity.
My guest today is Jeffrey Bacha. He is the CEO of DelMar Pharmaceuticals. They trade on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol DMPI. What other indications beyond brain cancer are you guys targeting?
Well, that's a great question. As I mentioned, this drug had been studied at the National Cancer Institute, so it had been established to have activity not only in brain cancers, but in other solid tumors such as lung cancer and ovarian cancer. And those cancers are treated differently than glioblastoma. They're treated with primarily platinum-based chemotherapies. drugs like cisplatin, carboplatin. And cisplatin is actually what cured Lance Armstrong. So we've also studied how our drug compares to the platinum-based medicines and how the mechanism is different. And what we've been able to show is that it is indeed different. The drug maintains activity, for example, in platinum-resistant ovarian cancer in the laboratory. And we can combine it with other drugs like the platinum-based agents or other DNA targeting agents such as PARP inhibitors, where we've been able to show that the synergy when you put our drug in combination with one of the others, because the mechanisms are complementary, 1 + 1 is more than 2, you get more bang for your buck. So we are very interested now that we're moving into a pivotal trial in refractory glioblastoma in building the program out into other solid tumors, including ovarian cancer, lung cancer, et cetera.
The company that we're highlighting today on Stock Day is DelMar Pharmaceuticals. They trade on the NASDAQ under DMPI. In closing here, Jeffrey, is there anything that you and I didn't get a chance to talk about that you would like to get out there to the listeners?
Well, I think this is an exciting time for a company. We are very excited to be moving into a pivotal phase 3 clinical trial. The financing that we just announced the completion of this morning is going to propel us full speed into that trial. And being able to leverage other data from the National Cancer Institute into other indications really opens a lot of promising doors for us and, of course, for the patients who we're hoping to be able to deliver a better therapy to as we go forward. So thank you very much.
I want to thank you for coming on the show. Please give us, some updates here in the next 40 or 50 days with your company, and it's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Everett, thank you very much.
The following program is entirely sponsored and produced by Uptick Newswire LLC, which is responsible for the following content. The opinions and information provided on today's show are those of the guests and of those of the respective companies they represent, and does not necessarily reflect those of the staff or management of this station. Uptick Network encourages all listeners of the show to do their own due diligence and research when determining investment strategies that'll work for them, or to seek the assistance of an investment professional. The guests of today's show may have paid to appear on the show and are not directly affiliated with Uptick Network or this station.